So, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us this morning for this third and last talk of the Photo Basel program. We are very pleased to have Simone Hoang with us this morning. Simone is based in Amsterdam. She studied photography at the Photo Academy in Amsterdam and at the International Center of Photography in New York. And in 2017, she attended the Charles Niepels Lab at the Van Eyck Academy in Maastricht. So for the first time, she's showing at Photo Basel her latest series, which is called The Night as a Dark Room. And we are very pleased to hear about this series. So please, Simone, could you tell us more about this series and how it did start?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's a great opportunity to tell about my work or to share about why I'm doing what I'm doing in a different context. This is a premiere of my latest investigation, and it's an ongoing project. So I started this about a half a year ago, and it called The Night as a Dark Room, so nature's dark room, basically. And basically what I've done, in short, is I went back into the history of photography, how photography started, and also if you look at analog photography, we make the connection right away with the dark room, because if you develop film negatives, you use a dark room which is made by people. And I thought, wouldn't it be possible to use the night, because every night there's a night, we know that now for years. Would it be possible to use the night, the darkness of the night, as a dark room rather than build a dark room as a human being? So what I did is I am originally from Vietnam, and in Vietnam there are a lot of remote places where it gets dark at the strangest times. And it's not necessarily we know the day and the night like we know basically in Europe. So I thought I grew up partially in Vietnam, but also partially in the Netherlands. So I thought it is an interesting thing that as a child it was always intriguing me in a way. And I was looking for places in the world where it gets the darkest at night. And one of these places is the Sahara, which you basically near the Algerian border, so the Moroccan and the Algerian border. And I started to see when in the year it would be the darkest there. So I went there now for only 2 times. So like I said, it's an ongoing thing. I just started basically. And I worked together with a lab called TU Delft in Delft, which is in the Netherlands. It's like a Technische Unie, and they are basically also investigate about how we can develop technology. So together with them, because I'm not doing this alone, we are basically investigating emulsion, which we can combine with the already existing film negatives that we can combine so that you actually got to be able to use the film negatives in using the night as a dark room rather than building a dark room. And basically this is one of the images that came out of it. Like, as you see, the colors that appear and the details that you see are not really the colors or the details that you in a classical, if you develop it in a classical way. And I also, in my next trip, I intend to make portraits. So this is only like a experiment what you see and what you won't see if you develop it in this way. I think it's also, to me, it's important to have like a kind of poetic approach to my work. So I work conceptually, but also like more in a poetic way. I think it's nice that it's given that we have the day and the night, and it's already there. So I rather in photography I try to use the elements that are already in nature rather than use the dark room, which is made by human beings. So yeah, that's basically the start of the project.
Thanks. And I think it's very interesting to have this photograph here, and we can really see that there are some particles appearing on it. And could you explain exactly what you did and what are these particles?
Yeah, the thing is, the film negatives are made in a factory, for example. Well, we all know Fuji and Kodak, and they're made to develop in a classical way. So the things that you see, the details that you see, you won't see. They're not visible when you develop it in a classical way. So it's also not necessarily my goal to have like a perfect picture or to use the negative to make a very realistic picture of the desert. But to me, it's more like the concept behind it. It's more important than the result of what you see or what you won't see in this case.
Yeah, for example, for the brownish one that we see at the booth,
you
told me that that sand entered into the camera.
Yes.
So is it something that happened here as well?
Yes, I think what also is important in my work, not only in the latest series, but also in the rest of what I do, is I think that the meaning of life is more important than the meaning of art, I always say. And I think that I always tend to grasp like into intense moments of my own life and make it universal, because at the end of the day, it's not about me or, you know, we're all like human beings. And for example, I get this, I don't know, like fascinating about this night and day because of my history in Vietnam. But that doesn't mean that everyone grew up there, but we all know the day and night. So I think it's also important that I use sentences in my work. So it's not only like a conceptual or poetic way, but for example, the photos that you see here, but at the booth, at the gallery, but also this one, I opened my camera and at the moment there was a sandstorm, which is a very logical process or like a natural thing in the desert. And I basically developed it with the sand, and I also use the site-specific characteristics of the moment into the development.
Yeah, you kept traces of the location as well.
It's like a partial of because I couldn't do this somewhere else, because somewhere else there would be no image, I think, because you really have to do this at the darkest moment of the night. Yeah.
And your photographs, they're titled 4:03 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. So the component of time seems to be quite important actually within the work. So could you explain us why this? Was it a time slot that was really crucial?
Well, the overall project is like the nature's dark room, or how you call it, like the night as a dark room. And I think I will title, because this is an ongoing thing, like every image that comes out of it, I title it with the subtitle of the moment that I developed the negative. So the whole process of making the photograph until it appears after developing, it all happens during the night. So when I'm in the Sahara, I always look at the times when at that moment it will be darkest moment at night. And then most of the time it's between 3 and 4:30 a.m. because the darkest moment there is always like before the sun goes up. So yeah.
And it's also why you were saying that the here and now of the images is essential.
Yes,
it's related to this question of time and
yes, it's very essential because it also has to do with seconds. It's really precisely, and I think it's also I like to have work which is site specific. So in that I always and strength this feeling so that you really have to be there at that time, at that place to get this done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it your first work that is site-specific?
No, actually, every work has a site-specific in it, but it's not necessarily my goal, but I think it's, if you work in a way that I do, I always, it comes back to be site-specific. Yeah. Yeah.
And the notion of memory seems also to be very important in your process and in your work.
Yeah, yeah.
How does it relate to, for example, the project The Night as a Dark Room?
I think to me it's always important to not only have a conceptual approach, but also to, I believe that if you as an artist, if you add a certain sense, it makes it makes it stronger in a way for people who got to see it or got to experience it. And I think you could approach it in a different way because I see that you showed the project I did, I did before, which is like sense of color. And what I did here was I choose 8 men perfumes, and I choose 8 men perfumes that have a marketing name in their name, which have a reference to a color. For example, Comme des Garçons has amazing green, but what I did was I collected them because I noticed that every marketing name has a reference towards a color or like a feeling. It's connected to a color, and I thought it was interesting because I thought like, okay, why would you connect a color to a perfume? So what I did was, it was also in a dark room, but not as a night, but I really made a dark room. I had a big bath with the perfume in the bath, and instead of developing the negatives in a classical way, I developed the negatives in the bath with perfume. So what you get is like a chemistry, like a thing going on, because the emulsion of the film is not made to be developed in this way. So amazing green, for example, becomes like a different color, and to me it was also a way to use a sense that you normally can't visualize, like a smell in this case, to literally translate it into a visual object. I believe that in that way you can memorize moments or intense moments in a different way. So to me, this is, I think, an example what you like. Coming back to your question, it is a way to show people the meaning of senses, that it could be really influence your the way you experience things.
And you didn't use any camera actually for this project, so it was really another experimental way of
like the
creating
without a camera. Yeah, no, I think to me it's not really photography is not necessarily about a camera or about making or taking pictures. I'm more curious about what photography does to how it literally colors our memory. And also with this project, which is also a different project, but it has I think, a link with the previous ones that I told you about earlier. What I did here is my family is from Vietnam, and I got adopted later when I was a teenager by Dutch parents. And the only pictures that I've got from my biological family are like 5 pictures that they're standing before a palm tree or they're standing in a rice field. And what I noticed is that the palm trees and the rice fields were like, their colors were realistic, but the colors of the faces of my family members were not. And in film and photography, it's actually a very familiar thing that certain colors or certain skin tones are difficult to capture. So it's not something new. It's not something that I invented. But what I found interesting is that for me, that means that my memory is literally colored by pictures that can't capture colored people. So I thought that was really, to me, that fascinates me as an artist, to show which colors are missing. And basically these are the film rolls that you see, and here I work together with a lab. And basically what it did is we invented like a kind of a sour emulsion, which it makes you able to pull everything out of the negatives. So basically you've got the negatives and we put all the elements out of there and we get the colors back in. So we basically made a new negative from which it is possible to make all the colors of the skin tones. And like the red, the yellow and the brown color are like proven to be very difficult colors, but they're also essential to capture like a brown skin or a yellow skin in Vietnam, for example. So I'm more in photography, I'm more interested in what it does to your perception or what it does to your memory, rather than going out with a camera and take or make pictures. Yeah.
And then the process is also very central to your
It's
approach.
like very like the materials. I think it's important to me to show the material and what you don't see normally and what you can see. So basically these photographs, you normally can't see these if you develop it in a classical way.
Yeah.
So that is an aspect that comes back in my work. Yeah.
And so you see that throughout your work. So since you're dealing with this aspect of memory, do you think that your understanding of memory is evolving? Each work that you do helps you understand better or differently this concept of memory?
Yeah, I think I do, but I think to me it's not a goal to understand it better or to. I think it's interesting to show the rest of the world how you could also experience memory. It's not rather that I think I'm like a professional in memory. I think it's interesting to me to show different aspects of memory. So in that case, it's enriching your development. Yeah, about it. Yeah.
And this one here was a work that you did in 2015. And what was your approach to it?
This was actually a start of what is happening now. So I started here. This is made from a black and white film negative. And this appears to be the only color that came out. So what I did here is reading a lot, so I do a lot of investigation about, what does color do, and in that sense. And I also read that there is one color, there's always a color in black and white film, but I never saw it. And here I cooked it in boiled water, so I develop it in like boiled water, and then there's this emulsion coming out, which is a bluish, yeah, emulsion. But here's also, again, it's not like I used the camera. It's more like, okay, given a black and white film negative that people normally don't buy when they don't want a color picture. I also show like, okay, we memorize that as a black and white, but there's also more to see. If you don't see it, then you don't see it as a memory.
Were you always interested in colors? Because colors are also very central. Were you always?
Yes, I make, well, that's, I think it's a personal thing. People could see it in a different way, but to me, colors do have a link with memory, because to me, if I think about moments, like colors it's a way of, it's a sense to me.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's important part of how I visualize things or how I see things that happened in the past.